I want to remind you of our history. I saw a really good article that showed a lot of history on Washington and Washington's crossing of the Delaware on Christmas. We used to be a country with shared ideals, shared values. We fought together for our independence, for our freedom. But a large portion of this country doesn't want freedom. They don't want independence. They want socialism. They want to bend the knee to a monarchy, to a crown. They want somebody else to think for them, to feel for them, and to worry about them. All right? And to worry for them. But most of us, we want independence. We want freedom. We want the right to be able to fight for our lives so that we can enjoy our lives and do what we want, whatever makes us happy, the pursuit of happiness, whatever career we'd like, whatever freedom, a freedom to be a freaking bean farmer in Oklahoma, or the freedom to become the president of the United States. Everybody in this country, regardless of skin color, has that right. But a lot of people on the left, if not everybody on the left, seems to have forgotten that. So I'm going to remind you. We're going to take a trip back in history. We're going to go on the time machine. Imagine strapping yourself in. I don't know what type of time machine you want to imagine. Do you want to imagine like Journey to the Center of the Earth time machine? Or, you know, that Denzel Washington movie where they're in Louisiana. And what is it? The one where they blow up the ship. It's like Mardi Gras and they blow the thing up. Deja vu. He goes back in time and saves that hot chick's life. Freaking, we could use that time machine, except you have to wake up in a hospital and they got to zap your heart back. That was a screwed up time. Maybe we won't take that time machine. We could think maybe like the UFOs, the Tic Tac UFOs they've been seeing. Maybe those are time machine. I don't know. Whatever type of time machine. How about this? DeLorean. Let's go back to the future. All right. So you get in the DeLorean. All right. Doc Brown's not there. He's like 96 years old. So you're going to have to do this yourself. You load it up. You go, 88 miles an hour, right? And now we're back in 1776. All right. And you're watching Washington and something around 2,500 men get ready to cross the Delaware on Christmas. That's the American spirit, the American way. We're willing to do fucked up things in fucked up conditions. Americans, right? How's that meme go? Americans willing to cross a frozen river on Christmas to kill you, right? That's America. Other countries, I've talked to Australians. I've talked to other countries. They think we're crazy. Oh, Americans, I have all these guns and you fucking sit there. Shut the fuck up. This is America. We're built different than the rest of the world. We're better. America is better than every country in the world. And this is why. All right. Exclusive. O'Donnell, America's first Christmas that changed the course of history. Let's have some fun with this. All right. December 1776 was one of the darkest times for America. Hyperinflation gripped the economy. Oh, that sounds interesting. Washington's army lost one battle after another. The mood of the country changed from optimism to defeat. But on Christmas Day, Americans, amid raging nor'easter, crossed an impassable ice-filled river, surprised and killed an expertly trained enemy, and changed the course of American history. Thomas Paine epically captured these days leading up to Christmas 1776 in The American Crisis. Quote, "These are the times that try men's souls," Paine wrote. "The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country, but he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of man and women. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation within us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph." Washington's army had lost one battle after another. The economy had tanked, and the paper money the United States printed seemed worthless. You should pay attention to this, folks. You should really hear these words, because it sounds very familiar, doesn't it? Americans were abandoning their cause in droves. During the fall of 1776, the British issued an amnesty proclamation that offered pardon and protection to rebels who signed an oath of loyalty to the king within 60 days. And thousands of Americans, including several members of Congress, clamored to sign the oath. One disgusted American patriot recalled, quote, "To the disgrace of the country and the human nature, great numbers flocked to confess their political sins to the representative of majesty and to obtain pardon. It was observed that these consisted of the very rich and the very poor, while middling class held their constancy. All right, think about that. The middle class held their shit together. They had balls. They said, no, F you, king. We're going to do it right. But the super rich, they were cowards. And the super poor, they were cowards. Only the folks in the middle who were fighting, who believed in something, who wanted to better themselves and better their families and work their way up a ladder that hadn't even been built yet, those were the people holding this country together. Again, middle-class friends and families, even somewhat poor friends and families. Don't you see the similarities there? I see the similarities. It says, making matters worse, the enlistments for the Continental Army expired in December and January 1st, 1777. That means that you could have just left. It would have been over. Most Americans could read, and the pamphlet immediately raised the morale of both the military and civilians. All right. The looming prospect of disaster seemed to spur Americans into action. As things get worse, we get stronger. You've heard that thing. Weak men make hard times make strong men make easy times make weak men. This is the type of thing. But when things get real weak here, it seems like God comes down and taps certain people with the core values and abilities to step up and take charge and make things happen. That's a key American value, a key American quality that is not seen in many other countries, folks. Quote, a republic cannot exist long in prosperity. Dr. Benjamin Rush later wrote in a letter to John Adams, quote, we require adversity to appear to possess most of the Republican spirit when most depressed. When things get hardest, we rise to the occasion. That's what that means. The crisis had a direct positive effect that steeled resolve. That December, 245 years ago, it sounds like such a long time, but it's not. It's like 3 lifetimes. It's like your grandma's mom. That's it. All right, your grandma's grandma. It's not long ago. It's not. 245 years ago, it marked a period where Americans from all stripes came together to alter the course of history in a great counteroffensive on Christmas night. On the eve of the battle, General George Washington sat in his tent on the banks of the Delaware River and methodically wrote the same 3 words over and over and over again on several small pieces of paper. He had decided on a daring plan, crossing the ice-choked Delaware River and mounting a surprise attack on the Hessian garrison there. Knowing that the assault could not hope to succeed if word of the plan reached the enemy, he detailed a Virginia to serve as sentries. I think they screwed up here in the article. I think it says he detailed there's probably some military or something from Virginia there to serve as the sentries around the Patriot camp. The general himself selected the password for the night, and that was what he was writing on scraps of paper for distribution to unit commanders. Hey, Breitbart, your article here has a typo. Excuse me, effing up my podcast. What the fuck? While the Surgeon General of the Continental Army was visiting Washington, one of the slips happened to fall on the floor. Quote, I was struck with the inspection of it, the physician wrote. It was victory or death. That was what George Washington wrote on that paper again and again and again all night. Victory or death. Think about that. Ooh, that's the bottom of the eggnog. Contrary to the myth perpetuated by many children's books, the Hessians in Trenton, New Jersey, were neither drunk nor idle. Their experienced commander, Colonel Jonathan Rall, the hero of White Plains, Chatterton's Hills, and the breakthrough at Fort Washington, kept his men in constant readiness and on patrol. A series of raids by the local militia in the prior days had put them on edge, and the men slept dressed and armed. Rall realized the precarious nature of the Trenton outpost and frequently demanded reinforcements, but to no avail. In exasperation, he complained, Scheisse be Scheiss! Shit on shit. Let them come. We will go at them with the bayonet. British spies had warned of an impending attack on Trenton, but no one knew the exact day and time. The intelligence, combined with the raids, put Rall and his men in a perpetual state of alert and began to fray at their nerves. If you stay in alert, all right, waiting for something, think about that. Think of any stress where you've been waiting for an impending decision, something that would be good or bad, something that was coming and you didn't know when. Think of how it built in your stomach. Every one of his troops sat there for days and weeks feeling that stress, and it took a big toll on them. All right, it took a big toll on them. It says Washington settled on a complicated plan to envelop Rall's garrison. The main force, which included the elite troops from Maryland, would cross at McConkey's Ferry. All right, this is a screwed up place. You got to understand. I want you to think about this. This is a huge ice river. All right, a huge ice river. And they've got to cross over 2,000 men on these boats, cross this river. If you fall over, you freeze to death. It's the middle of the night. It's Christmas. This is a hell of an endeavor. This is 1776. They didn't have floodlights and freaking parkas. Nobody was wearing like fleece-lined jackets and Ugg boots. All right. This was the shits of the shits. This was victory or death. It says the army was in pitiful condition. As one American officer remembered, it would be a terrible night for the soldiers who had no shoes. Some had tied old rags around their feet. Others were barefoot, and not one man complained. Do you know how much bitching and moaning would be? I'm cold. Come here. My ears hurt. Everybody would be bitching and moaning. Everybody's a pussy in 2021. These were freaking 17-year-old kids, a lot of these folks. Nobody was bitching. Nobody was moaning. They were getting the job done. They were fighting for independence. They were fighting for freedom from tyranny, something that should be starting to become familiar for many people today, dealing with tyranny. All right, it says by 11 p.m., a massive storm pelted the men with snow, sleet, and biting wind as they crossed the Delaware in Durham boats. All right, not to be confused with the Durham investigation. These were Durham boats. They're tall, walled boats with flat bottoms. All right. Crossing the Delaware in Durham boats. Many people couldn't swim. If they fell over the side, they would die. Despite the risk of frostbite and hypothermia, the indefatigable. What is that? Who wants to use a word that big? I've never even seen that word. We're going to look that word up really quick so that I can read this properly for you guys. I have to throw this in there. Is that even a word? It's an adjective. Indefatigable. It means incapable of being incapable of being defeated, incapable of being fatigued. All right. Why would you use that word? It's 2021. Despite the risk of frostbite and hypothermia, you could say the ever-ready Continental Army, the strong-willed Continental Army, the excited beyond tired, the indefatigable Continental Army. You had a typo 3 paragraphs ago, and now you're using words half of us don't know. I'm sorry. I'm bitching at Breitbart now. The Continental Army pressed on. Washington was out in front. Somebody said, I've never seen Washington so determined as he is now. All right. Miraculously, the Americans didn't lose a single soldier in the initial crossing. However, the storm had put them far behind their timetable. All right. Through the snow and sleet, driven nearly horizontal by punishing winds, the men and horses trudged through drifts and slid across icy roads. Quote, many of our poor soldiers are barefoot and ill-clad. All right. The officers were literally feeling bad for their folks. All right. The route was easily traced. There was snow everywhere. Imagine that. You getting across the river. You got horses. This isn't just a bunch of dudes. This is 2,500 people. This is horses. There are wagons. There's food and supplies. There's ammunition. Everything you'd need in a war now, but not easily transportable. They're on wagons back then and stuff. It's 1776. Nobody had an engine. Nobody has a car. You couldn't say, hey, Mike, drive that shit over around the fucking river. This was an endeavor. People were freezing to death. People were crying. People were fucked up. People had no shoes. All right? This isn't like today where everybody's got a pair of fucking Nikes and then tells you you're privileged. Back then, people were fucked. And they didn't care. Nobody complained. The Americans arrived on the outskirts of Trenton, New Jersey, just before 8 o'clock in the morning. Remember When I said that they're doing 11 p.m., the storm they're still fucking crossing. This is hours and this is 8 in the morning now, the next day. I mean, this isn't something, they don't get a nap. They're doing this for days trying to get across this fucking river. And just so happens Christmas Day, 8 a.m., there they are taking a look across. All right, there they are. 8 o'clock in the morning. Thanks to the reduced visibility from the storm, they approached within 200 yards before the sentries cried, "Der Fiend, Haratis, Haratis!" The enemy. Turn out. I don't know if you know yet, but Hessians are German. Anyway, shots were fired. All right, and the Americans charged, some yelling, "These are the times that try men's souls." The famous words penned by Thomas Paine as their battle cry. The Hessians, disorganized, fell back from the onslaught that seemed to come from all around them. Small groups clashed throughout the city, house-to-house fighting, just like Afghanistan, just like Iraq. It's house-to-house fighting. This is not something new. All right, maybe our technology has changed, but we've been doing this shit for hundreds of years. With kettle drums beating, Raoul shouted, "All who are my grenadiers, forward!" By this time, the Americans had infiltrated the entire city. Marksmen took up secure positions in houses and behind fences where they could pick off enemy fires. Boom! One by one. American artillery, commanded by Bostonian Colonel Henry Knox. By the way, there's a myth. Some say it's real, some say it's not real. But Henry Knox was close with Washington, and he was a fat-ass motherfucker. And when Washington stepped into his boat, it's rumored that Washington said something, kicked him in his ass, and said to Henry, he said, "Hey, Harry, you need to move your fat ass." He said something like that. "Move your fat ass, but do it slowly so you don't swamp the boat." He's literally saying, "Hey, buddy, move quick. I got to get on this fucking boat, but don't do it too fast, you fat motherfucker. You fat piece of shit, Henry Knox. If you move too fast, you're going to dump all of us in this cold-ass river. I'm going to fuck you up." That's the rumor. At least that's 2021 translation for what Washington may have said. But anyway, this is Henry Knox, all right? Knox, all right, they took the city. Colonel Henry Knox pummeled the oncoming Hessians. Knox later wrote, "Here succeeded a scene of war, of which I had been often conceived, but never saw before." All right, he'd often dreamed of that type of war, but never saw a sight such as what he had seen that day. Another participant captured the macabre melee. "My blood chilled to see horror and distress, such horror and distress, blood mingling together, the dying groans and garments rolled in blood. The sight was too much to bear." After retaking his artillery, Raoul tried but failed to rally his men, acting on faulty intelligence. He assumed that his only escape route, a bridge across the Assunpink Creek, had been captured by the Marbleheaders. He ordered the Hessians to retreat through an orchard to the southeast. At that moment, 2 bullets struck the commander in the side. Mortally wounded, he reeled in the saddle. That means he went, ugh, reeled in the saddle. Fuck! His men attempted to evade the Patriot forces, but the Americans pursued on horseback. Washington leading the attack. Can you imagine them galloping through this orchard? Fucking going right after these guys. Right after. Screaming, "March on, brave fellows, after me." Hit from 3 sides, the Hessians, now leaderless, because remember, their leader's fucked up, dying in his saddle, going, "Oh, fuck me." They lowered their guns. They lowered their flags. They gave up. 9 a.m. All right? Think about that. They got there right before 8. They gave up at 9. This is just an hour. All of the shit I just read. 1 hour. Word of the surrender soon spread to the Continental forces throughout Trenton. A huge shout took the town as the triumphant Americans threw their hats into the air and cheered the victory. In short order, they found 40 hogsheads of rum and cracked them open. By the time Washington found out about the alcohol and ordered the casks destroyed, the soldiers drank so freely to admit any discipline or defense. Washington had more things he wanted to do that day, but everybody got a little too drunk after the victory, all right? The Americans had killed 22 Hessians, severely wounded 84, and took 896 prisoners while suffering few losses. Equally important, they captured as many muskets, bayonets, cartouche boxes, and swords, as well as all the artillery, swelling their supplies. The Americans had won a great victory, but they had little time for rest. Washington needed to capitalize on the victory of Trenton and eliminate the other British troops in New Jersey. But for that, he would need troops. The enlistment period for the bulk of Washington's men expired on New Year's Day, and they had every right to return home. What was left of the Continental Army went into formation and stood at attention as Washington mustered his oratorical prowess, and appealed to the men to continue fighting. He said, quote, "My brave fellows, you have done all I've asked you to do, and more that could be reasonably expected. But your country is at stake. Your wives are at stake, your houses, and all that you hold dear. If you will consent to stay 1 month longer, you will render that service to the cause of liberty and to your country, which you probably can never, ever do under any of other circumstances." All right. He's basically saying, please, we just won this battle. The war is almost over. We're about to have a free country. If you leave, your wives are going to get screwed up. Your houses are going to get burned down. Everything's going to get fucked up, but stay with me. Fight with me for 1 more month. Fight for me and have a free country. All right. That's what he told them. Moved by the general's words and his most affectionate manner, men slowly stepped forward from their ranks. More soldiers followed. As the majority of the army decided to continue fighting, many of those who stepped forward would help turn the tide in the coming battles to win us liberty that we enjoy today. And while the sacrifice was great, many of those volunteers died in battle or from smallpox. America's resolve is at its strongest in its darkest hours. All right, I wanted to read that to you. I know it was a little long, but I want you to understand that historically, the pattern shows that when we're the most fucked up, when we're the most screwed, when our conservative values are crushed into the dirt, when freedom and liberty are being pissed upon by the enemy, Americans always rise to the occasion. We've done it before, and we will do it again.